So this is kind of a follow-up video to a video that I made last week. Pretty much just me talking about like unemployment. I kind of found it funny about like kind of how that came together because I like to just make these videos and then I like to find the gameplay that I want to use and basically throw together my thumbnails and things like that. I like to be inspired on the fly, see what I come up with that I find interesting. But the reason I'm making this video is because right now I'm 23 days away from moving out of the, temporary living situation that I'm in. And I'm kind of making this video as a preemptive thank you, not necessarily like a full-on thank you video or anything, but mainly to just express like where I am emotionally and what I've been thinking about and just life in general. It's kind of funny, I wasn't expecting to spend nearly a whole year at this point. I'm about, come tomorrow, I'm like, I'd say a full 4 months away from being unemployed for like a year, So I kind of just been sitting down thinking to myself like, damn, what have I really sat down and learned in this time? What have I sat down and experienced? What do I think of my life at this moment? And I'll be honest, I'm a bit disappointed, realistically. Like, I didn't think I'd spend a year. And I was unemployed not too long after my birthday. It was like a month and like a week or something like that. So I kind of think about it like, I didn't really expect nearly a full year of being unemployed after my birthday. And I'm kind of like, this is a very strange year in my life. A very unique year where I sit down and I look at myself emotionally. I sit down and I look at the last experience that I had. And I kind of just in a place where I'm coming to terms with myself, where I am emotionally. I'm sitting down doing my best to have faith, looking at God and being like, when are you going to assist me? When is everything going to work? When is everything going to happen so I don't really have to keep doing this? But I'm just at this place in life where I'm doing my best to be calm and collected. I've really watched everything basically like fall to dust. So it's a unique place to be in when you're really just sitting here like, I don't know what's next. I'm genuinely doing my best not to live life day by day, but I'm also doing my best to look at myself and say, okay, well, what do the next months look like if I don't get anything? What does my life look like if I don't get anything? And I'm at that point of, I really don't know. I really don't know what it's going to be like if I don't have anything right now. I have a couple months where I have things kind of put together. My unemployment ran out. I said, come tomorrow. It's like 3 months. So, I've been making things work on the money that I have. Haven't been able to get a job part-time, full-time. So, I've been just dealing with just like going through life at this point, kind of doing my best to like, I would say keep everything afloat because, I haven't stopped and rebounded and got back on my feet, build up my savings. Most recently, I just ended up moving over my, I think it was like the 401k money from my last job. So I basically have like that as like a super backup plan. But I've also just been like, damn, the next time I actually could land on my feet, I would like to be able to build up another set of funds, right? Where if I were to be in such a predicament again, praying to God, I find something that I won't consistently be dealing with finding a new job every year and a half or less. Something that's actually stable and it'll give me a real sense of being able to build a career for myself. I ended up seeing a video a couple of years ago as far as that whole career statement, where everybody thinks of success like a straight line, right? Virgil Abloh, this was like a video of him talking about his career and life experiences. And he was basically saying, like, the best way to think of it is like, think of like a track, right? And then put a bunch of tracks on top of each other, right? It's kind of all of the things that you're doing make a full circle and they weave into each other. It's kind of the best way I could think of it. I could have said like knitting a blanket, but I don't really think that makes much sense for me because personally I don't know how to knit anything. I don't have homemaking skills, LOL. But it was one of those moments that makes me stop and say, like, it's so unique to sit down and see how all of my experiences are starting to tie together for the bigger picture. And I have a couple of things that I would like to express just once I'm in a better place to really, tell you my thoughts and where I am as far as those lofty goals and me actually making actionable steps to get to that point. But as far as me telling you my one main actionable step right now, it's really going into like IT. I was doing my best to find like help desk roles and stuff. And now I realize, hey, if everybody's focused on being at home in their pajamas, trying to do the same thing, it makes sense for me to just go out into the field, go out and get my hands dirty again, just like the last role where I went in, my goal was to break the ice. I had something that was more in line with using like my actual degree that I went to college for and all that other stuff. And that's still a possibility, but I realized, hey, that's more of a living resume, me going out into the field, doing gigs, building up something for myself, finding a consistent place for me to sit down and work on my craft and skill set and have people who can really vouch for me over a period of time. So, I just stop and really look at this time frame that I've been experiencing and just keeping in mind that life is crazy, You're going to be all over the place. Kind of going back to that visualization that I attempted to give, which was kind of loose, like a knitted blanket, lol. But with everything that happens, you just have to keep your head up. Even being at this for going on 9 months now, because I've been applying for jobs since like November. So going at this for like 9 months, it's just been a long process. Nothing's really just been sticking. I've pivoted and made several changes. I've tried to do sales as I have a history in that. Nobody was willing to pick me up. So, my homegirl was like, you might need to go back to doing in-person positions, after just coming from that, And even then, I was in a role where I definitely could see that I had a lot of upward momentum and just didn't work out in the fashion that I desired. So I'm just in this space now of just keeping my head up, having some kind of faith that everything will work out. 23 days away from not really knowing where I'm going to be. But at the same time, I'm confident that something's going to happen, I'm confident that things are going to turn around for me. And regardless of whether that actually happens in the 23 days or it might take longer, I'm going to be able to sit down and make it happen and make something happen for myself. But, I really just wanted to make this video. It's the end of June. I wanted to, kind of stay on the path of making videos. This is one thing I've always wanted to do since I was in high school, sitting down watching like YouTubers just talk about absolutely anything and everything. And I remember, even on this channel, my video content has changed, like going from like somewhat current events to doing things where I sit down and see things in the media and I just give my take on it. And I would still like to go back to those videos. But even doing this, spreading videos about my life, my experiences, and doing my best to encourage somebody. I feel like for me, in my real life, I don't really talk a lot about being encouraged, or at least I don't talk to myself a lot about being encouraged. But I do like to encourage others. I do like to tell people around me that they're capable of more than what they see of themselves. And that's also something I could definitely practice on when I look in the mirror, right? So, I just want to say to anybody who's currently experiencing, I would say, an extreme amount of volatility, right? Because right now for me, my life is very volatile. But even if you're experiencing, I would say, even a brief or a small amount of pushback or setback, you have the ability to overcome. Just take your time and keep a clear mind, keep a clear heart, and just take a deep breath and ask yourself, what step do I need to take now? My homegirl's really been pushing me to sit down and plan and do my best to start thinking about how I plan and how I approach planning and how I look at things. And I believe right now that's been a big component of my experience recently, or really just under her roof at the time. How am I looking at things? How am I setting myself up for success? And if I'm not setting myself up for success, how am I preparing myself to be able to shift myself into a more successful position if where I'm at isn't working, right? And I'm basically seeing that. I've been applying for these IT help desk roles, and it's been 30 days, right? Haven't gotten a single interview, haven't gotten a single call back. Realistically, I'm starting to get a few denials because most of the roles have been like customer service based. But it's that moment where I'm like, okay, there's been less than 30 days on the clock. It's time to shift into something else. She's been telling me, you might need to shift into something where you could get something in 3-4 days, And I believe, hey, that perspective makes sense at the same time. But I also believe, just like an egg, right? An egg, that chick inside that egg doesn't stop until it breaks through the surface. And it's able to breathe its first breath, it breaks down the egg, it gets out, and it walks around, right? So I understand right now I'm in this phase of I'm in this shell and I'm doing everything I can to penetrate the shell. So I'm thinking, am I going to take something that's not as conducive as what I've been looking for, even though that might be the quickest way to break out the shell, or am I going to continue to strive for what it is I want? And hey, maybe I could sit down and try to get that job I could get in the door in a week, or I could still focus on what my main goal is and find something that might take me 2 weeks. It might take me 3 weeks. They're trying to get people into the door as fast as possible in other areas and other fields, and it's about, continuing to pivot, pay attention, see where the doors are open, see what makes the most sense for what you're trying to do, achieve, and where you're trying to go. So I really just want to say, no matter what, right now, things may be hard. Life is going to get harder, but you have to remain consistent. And again, this is not only something that I'm making for you, but it's something that also applies to me too. But with that being said, this is Lamb from Damaged. Hope you have a good one. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm looking to make some more video game content, but my life is kind of all over the place, so video games ain't really the top priority right now. But there's a lot of interesting things I've been watching and seeing. But with that being said, I would love to talk about them, and I will soon. But I'll catch you guys in the next one, and I hope everything is going well for you. Bye-bye.